From the Storybook Theater at NWCT, it's the How Do You Do Show with Talon Bigelow. Today's guest, Coval, Naomi Rubin, and Becky Hawkins. Plus, I share my comic. I'm Perry Winkle. Here's your host, Talon Bigelow. Hey everyone, welcome to the third season of How Do You Do? I'm your host, Talon Bigelow. Hope you had a good winter break. I know we did. Today's going to be a good show. We're going to be talking about something I really love, comics. Now, I'll admit, they weren't something that I got into until I was a little bit older, but, my way in was superhero cartoons. So, like, the X-Men cartoon was a really big one for me. That really kind of introduced me to the Marvel Universe, and, I'm sure a series of, like, toys and other things did too, but X-Men were the one I really first became aware of as a concept, and then from there, I was very interested in superhero movies, and now, no surprise, I'm a big fan of the Marvel movies.
Wait, there's more Marvel movies?
Yeah, there's more than one. What one have you seen?
Well, I saw the first one. I saw Captain Marvel's, so what are the others?
Yeah, Captain Marvel is definitely a Marvel movie. I understand the confusion. So, that is a Marvel movie with Marvel in the name. That's just a coincidence, though, and I'm talking about all of the Marvel movies, otherwise known as the MCU or the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Wow, okay, so how many movies are there?
There are 23 Marvel movies.
23?
Right now, yeah, they're making more.
Who has the time to sit down and watch 23 movies?
I know, who has free time right now?
Can you just catch me up on the story so far, and I'll jump in?
So you want me to give you a synopsis of all 23 Marvel movies?
Yeah, give me the spark notes.
Okay, sure. So, the MCU starts with Tony Stark, also known as Iron Man, who is a billionaire weapon...
Iron Man? That's a weird name for a hero. Is he iron things? Is he made of irons? Is he made of iron? Did I leave my iron on? I was using it to iron my costume. No. I remember turning it off. I feel like I forgot something, though. Tony Starch. That's pretty good. I should tell him that one.
You with me so far, Perry?
Yep, I'm with you so far. Yep, keep going.
Great. So, Captain America, most people kind of might be familiar with. That's Steve Rogers.
Man, is that talking about someone else? I'm starting to think that listening to someone talk about a movie isn't as interesting as watching the movie. Now that I think about it, why do podcasts exist? All right, somebody's got to rein them in. I guess it should be me. Talon, we could probably do this later. We should probably wrap it up.
Okay, I think we're like 11 movies in, so things are about to get weird, right? So Phase 2 is still ramping up. Now we're getting introduced to space because it's the Guardians of the Galaxy. So the Guardians are kind of already a team, kind of like the Avengers, only they are kind of...
Well,
Avengers.
Okay, I've learned a valuable lesson.
They had to get there, but when they come together, they're no human.
We'll be right back with more How Do You Do?
Then there's a lot of depth, Here's something you won't see in any art.
Are you guys ready for a mission?
Yeah.
All right.
Kids, stand up and do what she was supposed to be doing.
No!
Acting is pretending, and it's fun to pretend.
This is my harmonica. Da, 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 da.
Telescope, oh my gosh, do you see anything exciting out there with your telescope?
Oh, I saw Rylan one giant step back.
May I come to tea? Yes, you may.
Does anybody hear the dragon snoring?
No, that's my dog.
You guys have been so much fun.
Can we play again?
Again? Absolutely.
Oh, hey. Check out this comic I got from Books with Pictures. This is Sam Wilson, a.k.a. the Falcon's debut, taking over for Captain America. Pretty cool. Anyway, our guests today are using their comic creation skills to show other families how to tell their own stories. Please welcome Coval, Naomi Rubin, and Becky Hawkins. we're kind of doing a little talking about comics. And Perry and I have been talking a lot about comics today. How did you get started on that? What was it about comics that stuck with you?
So I got into comics through the newspaper. My parents got the newspaper every day, and most of the comics were simple enough that I could read them pretty early on, or my parents could explain them. Newspaper comics are very near and dear to my heart, and I would just try drawing those and copying them and drawing myself as a Garfield character and developed from there.
I was really into cartoons, animation, and video games when I was a kid, and my way of interacting with those, I would just sit down and try to draw the characters. I didn't really gravitate towards comics at first because comics that I saw were very different from these cartoons and video games that were really cute and fun. But then I started to see Japanese animation, anime, and manga comics. Here's a manga, Yotsubato Bikkuri, which is a kind of recent manga. These manga comics that a lot of the animation and cartoons and games that I saw were actually based on these Japanese comics, and when I started reading those, it sort of clicked for me that drawing comics was a way, and ultimately like a pretty simple way that I could get in and like have these characters, living in their own stories and tell my own story.
Actually, thinking back now, Calvin and Hobbes is one of my first books that I ever read. And staying with my grandparents, they wouldn't let me watch TV very often or get on the computer. We were up in the North Georgia mountains, and just blowing through Calvin and Hobbes books was actually really important to me growing up.
I think most people who maybe don't know comics very well tend to think of superhero comics as kind of the one story that is being told, but there's so many different kinds of stories being told.
I think people go through a couple of phases of not being familiar with comics. I have had people look at the comic in my hand and go oh, that's kid stuff. Why are you reading that? And then when I hold it up, they're like, oh, V for Vendetta. Yeah. What an amazing story. It's so deep and wonderful. And I'm like, this is the thing that you like. So I think the challenge, at least in the US, is connecting people to things that are age appropriate and, having that it's not all superheroes. It's not all kid stuff. It's not all gritty, angry adult stuff. There's a lot of room.
Some people, they read a superhero comic and they can see themselves in the comic and they really identify with the characters in it, or something about the story connects with them really strongly. And if that's not you, that doesn't mean that comics aren't your thing and that you should stop looking. When I was younger, that's kind of the experience that I had. There are comics about physics and math, and comics about farming and rural jobs and all sorts of really cool, interesting, deep topics. Almost any subject can be a comic. And if there isn't a comic about the thing that you like the most, just wait half a year. That comic will exist eventually. And you can also always make your own if you don't see the thing that you want.
It strikes me that maybe people also don't understand how many people it might take to make a comic. Could you speak to that real quick? How many people normally, what's the average?
Yeah, absolutely. It depends on the scope of the comic. Sometimes it depends on how long the comic is or how quickly the comic needs to come out. Any given series in Japan usually needs to be 10 to 15 pages a week. So the author of this book is oftentimes, they're doing a rough draft of the page in pencil, and then they might ink the main characters, and then almost everything else is done by a team of assistants that they would have in their office, sometimes 2 to 4 assistants, and that's just doing the drawing part. Before you even get there, a comic like this will go through an editor, might have multiple rounds of editing where they meet to refine the script and decide what's going to happen this week in the comic. And then, of course, once you have that, in Japan, a comic like this will first be published in a magazine alongside a number of different series. And so you have a whole company that's based around publishing that magazine, editing all the comics together. Then there's, advertisements that get put in the magazine. There's book design. There's all sorts of roles in publishing, from editing, people who will then translate this comic into other languages. And then once you get on the web, there's a whole host of other careers that involve taking this comic and making it accessible on the internet as well. I actually ended up working in the comics industry after college as an editor and a translator, because I spent a lot of time learning Japanese so that I could read more comics. So that became a really fun job to do. I currently make a fantasy series on my own, as well as the comic that I'm doing with Pueblo Unido.
Becky, of course, we know you from Ghostlight. Always honored to appear. I think I've made my way into him, and I felt like I made it at Northwest Children's Theater. I feel like
I've heard that from a couple different staff members and students and interns.
It's a good feeling, yeah. But what else do you have at your disposal to show us? What have you been working on?
Yeah, so with Ghostlight, I do all of them on actual postcards. I started doing that because before I worked at Northwest Children's Theater, I was a saxophone player on a cruise ship, and then I got tired of not being in one place, and I got a job at Northwest Children's Theater. So I started working on postcards while I was traveling because I thought it was so cool getting to see all these different places where you could just be walking down the street. This one is in, I think, St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. This is Bunbury, Australia. I had this idea that watercolor should be this very refined art type of thing, and then I also did really goofy pen drawings on the side, and then I started kind of meeting in the middle where I still want to create like really pretty lighting and give you a sense of where you are, but then also like have this goober walking around. I also have a comic called Super Butch. That one's coming out weekly online. It's a comic about a reporter who is trying to get one big story to get her career kind of off the ground. She's always getting stuck writing fluffy things about like the mayor's wife's dog and whatnot. And then she hears rumors about a masked hero protecting the lesbian bar scene from corrupt law enforcement, and so she tries to chase down the story. That is all online.
Pueblo Unido is hosting a workshop. What is this workshop going to be about? What can kids expect? Who should sign up?
Pueblo Unido PDX, which is a local nonprofit organization here in Portland, is hosting a workshop with Northwest Children's Theater to talk to kids about how you can tell your story or story you came up with using comics. The workshop kind of came out of a project that I'm doing with Pueblo Unido to make a comic together, telling some stories from the clients of Pueblo Unido. And Pueblo Unido is a nonprofit organization that helps people who are facing detention and deportation here in the Pacific Northwest. It can be difficult to talk about being in detention or being released from detention, and so we're using comics as one way of sharing those stories. The workshop is pretty much for anybody who is interested in comics at all, or maybe doesn't even super know what comics are, but they're like, hey, I like cartoons, I like drawing, that stuff looks kind of cool. We'd love to have you. We're gonna start with a brief introduction, just kind of going through some comics that we like, talk about how comics are often like the jumping off point for stories that we really love in comics, movies, video games, that kind of thing. We'll go over the way that we make comics, and then we'll actually all make a short comic together. You can throw out your ideas, tell us what kind of characters you like to see, and I'll flip the camera onto a digital drawing tablet that I have so we can interactively draw a comic together. And then we'll give you some advice for starting your own comic, and if there's time, maybe we can even help you make your own comic alongside us while we go through the workshop a little bit.
Cam, I want to ask you more about your role at Pueblo Unido and more of the work you do outside of this workshop.
Sure. So I'm the co-founder and the executive director currently of Pueblo Unido. And as Naomi explained, we're focused on helping folks who are facing deportation, whether they're detained or not, to access legal aid and gather supporting events, achieve the right to remain in their communities with their families. So that's what we're really focused on, and through connecting people to some reliable attorneys that we work with, through fundraising, small donations from the community, we've been able to help 39 people at this point get released from detention and reunite with their families, and 10 folks have already totally beaten their case against deportation, And we've been able to connect hundreds of other people to totally free legal aid. So, that's our primary focus. And we'd initially envisioned doing this workshop in person prior to COVID at things like Know Your Rights events, so that we could be sharing really important information with adults who could be affected by immigration enforcement, and at the same time have Naomi and other volunteers kind of lead a storytelling workshop with immigrant youth, so that they could take charge of their own narrative and be able to tell their stories in a really personal way. This is a really important project to myself and to our other co-founder, Francisco Rodriguez, because we were really excited about using comics to tell this narrative. Our co-founder, Francisco, was one of the first DACA recipients in Oregon arrested by ICE under the Trump administration. And we had a protest that was able to secure his release from detention. But as a result of all of the news and all the noise around that event, he kind of became famous for being arrested by immigration in Oregon. And the way that somebody's images can be used, their stories are told in the media without their consent, can be really damaging, personally and to their families. So this was, I think, was an initiative from Naomi as a really interesting way to be able to tell these stories and avoid, exploiting people's images or, violating their privacy. So that's why it's so important to me. And we're hopeful that it can encourage people to not only connect with other folks in the community who might be going through some of these struggles and raise awareness about how that can affect your life and your broader community, but also we intend to include an addendum that offers suggestions for folks to actually take action to be able to support other people in their community who might be experiencing these struggles.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like that is incredibly valuable work, especially right now. So thank you all for doing it. Thank you, all three of you, so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to this workshop. It sounds like it's going to be a blast. If I sneak in, don't be surprised, because I feel like I still have a lot I want to learn from all three of you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
The Tell Your Story with Comics workshop will be hosted on February 5th, and you can register for it at the link in the description. We'll be right back with more How Do You Do? Sorry, it's getting intense. Well, we are at the end of the show, and that means it's time, again, for You Do. The segment where we take your photos and videos. Perry? Look under the... What the... Who does this look like? Oh. Periwinkle. Did you write a comic?
Not Periwinkle, it's me, the Blue Shade.
Oh my gosh, first of all, you look amazing.
Pretty cool, right?
Can you tell us a little bit about the adventures of Blue Shade?
Sure, yeah. By day, I am Periwinkle, mild-mannered co-host of How Do You Do?
I recognize that guy.
Yeah, that's you.
You did a pretty good job. I will say, I think I'm starting to agree with you.
What do you mean?
I think humans have too many teeth.
Yeah. Definitely too many teeth.
I mean, your teeth look just the right amount.
3 is a perfect number of teeth.
Well, anyway, you have a secret.
Also by day, but, other days, Blue Shade has adventures. Blue Shade has only one weakness.
Uh-oh.
When he's hungry, he turns into Scary Winkle.
Oh my gosh! Scary Winkle! This is something I'd want to see. I'd want to see Godzilla, King Kong, Scary Winkle.
Well, it's definitely not as fun as it looks, and I've been doing a pretty good job of keeping it under control, but hopefully you never have to meet Scary Winkle.
Wait, this happens to you in real life?
Oh yeah, this part's inspired by real life.
What part doesn't happen?
Oh, well, in real life, I don't wear a cape.
Wait. This happens to you in real life?
Yeah, but only if I'm really hungry.
How hungry do you have to get? Like, what's the longest period of time you can go without eating before this happens?
I'd have to not eat for probably 12 hours before I turn into Scary Winkle.
That's not that long.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Well, luckily you got a carrot and some ice cream and some peanuts and a burger. You know, balanced breakfast. Coming soon to Many Lives of Blue Shade. Look, it's our building. That is our building. There's you. Wow, Perry. I can't wait to read all this. Thank you so much for sharing this with all of us. This is amazing.
What do you think? You think I belong in the Marvel who'sy whatsy?
I think I could probably put a call in to Kevin Feige about getting you to join the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think we could do that. I mean, this is a great resume.
I think I'd make a good fit.
I feel safer knowing that Blue Shade is my co-host. Unfortunately, that means we are out of time for you, but that's okay. We're going to get it next week. So, my thanks again to Coval, Naomi Rubin, and Becky Hawkins. I'm Talon Bigelow, reminding you to stay safe, wash your hands, go read a comic, go write a comic. We'll see you next time.